For a bit of context, this happened sometime in North Carolina. This happened to a 17-year-old teenager named Andy. This was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago. This still frightens him to this day, and I'll be giving out a little bit of what happened. Now, to give it a little bit of a bit of backstory, as his parents and him had been living in North Carolina for at least 10 years, ever since moving from West Virginia. Andy really liked the place. He was the only child, but he was used to being on his own. However, his parents were busy with work and rarely had time to be at home to help him. But, of course, being tonight felt different as Andy's parents had gone away for the weekend, leaving Andy to tend to the house. Of course, as he heard the rain pounding against the windows and eerie noises sent chills down Andy's spine, Andy was trying to catch up on some homework. As he was doing some homework, it wasn't until maybe an hour later when he was sitting in his room, distracting himself by scrolling through his phone on Facebook. His heart skipped a beat suddenly when he received a call from an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering it, but curiosity got the better of him and he answered the phone, thinking it could be someone important. "Hello?" Andy answered cautiously. "Hi there. Is this Andy?" a deep voice inquired. Andy's heart raced. He didn't recognize the voice, and he couldn't help but wonder who would be calling him at this hour from an unknown number. "Yes, this is Andy. Who is this?" he asked, trying to sound confident in his voice. "My name is Tony, and I'm from another state. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I saw your number on a social media post, and I just had to call you." Tony said this, sounding oddly cheerful. Andy was surprised, but he rarely shared his phone number on social media, and he couldn't imagine why anyone from another state would want to contact him. "Oh, I see. How can I help you today, Tony?" Andy asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "I just wanted to talk to someone, and I thought you seemed like a cool person." "So what's up?" Tony said, seeming obvious at the late hour of the strange situation, and Andy was starting to get a bad feeling about it. Andy's mind raced as he didn't know what to make of the situation, but he was getting more and more uncomfortable, but he didn't also want to be rude. He decided to engage in the conversation with Tony. They talked for a little while about random things, and Andy started to relax. Tony seemed like a nice guy, and Andy found himself opening up to him. But as the conversation went on, Tony started to get a little personal. He started asking Andy personal questions, and his questions became more and more instructive. Andy decided to end the call there, but just before he could, Tony said something that sent chills down his spine. "I know you're home alone, Andy." Andy's heart stopped and his color drained. How did Tony even knew that he was alone? He quickly hung up the phone and tried to calm himself down, telling himself that Tony was just playing a prank on him. But deep down, Andy couldn't shake off that feeling that something wasn't right. Just as he was about to settle down for the night, he heard a knock on the front door. His heart raced as he cautiously made his way towards the door, peering through the peephole. He saw, but there was no one there. Just as he was about to turn away, he heard another knock, this time coming from the window. Andy looked at all the doors and windows, hoping that it was just imagination playing tricks on him, but just then his phone rang again. It was Tony again, and he picked it up. "Hi, Andy. Are you still there?" Tony asked, sounding eerily calm. "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" Andy yelled into the phone. "I just wanted to talk to someone, Andy, and I once saw your picture. I knew it had to be you. You seemed like the perfect victim for my game," Tony said, making Andy's color drained. All Andy could feel was the heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know who this Tony was, but he had to do something. He quickly dialed 911, but just as the operator answered, the line went disconnected. Feeling terrified, Andy grabbed his baseball bat and huddled against the corner, waiting for help to arrive. But just as he heard a window shattering, he realized that someone was in the house. Fear overtook him as he think of a way out, and then it hit him. He took a secret passage in the closet that led to the attic, and without wasting any more time, Andy climbed the passage and locked the door behind him. He could hear that Tony was searching the house, calling out his name, but Andy stayed as quiet as he could, too afraid to make a sound. It felt like hours, but it wasn't until maybe a few moments later when the police arrived. And by then, when the police arrived and they searched the house, they found no sign of who broke in. But what they also did find was a written message on the mirror here in what appeared to be black markers saying, "Come on out, Andy." Andy never felt safe in his own house since then. He was constantly paranoid and always looking over, thinking that someone could be there. Of course, the police had taken his statement, but they had no idea who this Tony person was. At this point, they honestly had to come to a conclusion that it could have been someone trying to break in, but all they had was the unknown number, which of course they couldn't trace the number or anything. But what also became the more apparent was the fact that this Tony person had somehow found his house. They're not sure how this happened, but it definitely really sent chills down the spine when they think of it. And still to this day, they even wonder what could have happened to Andy if he had not gone through that secret passageway up that stairs. It still frightens him today, and he now feels more comfortable being alone again. Although he does get paranoid from time to time, thinking that someone was trying to break in. This story happened to a high school girlfriend named Sabrina. Now, to be clear, Sabrina was about maybe 19 years old, and she was in college. This story would still, to this day, is not really the type to make you jump out of your seat, but it's definitely one that really takes the prize. Now, while on campus, she was working on stuff like homework and that. She was working on it when all of a sudden she ended up looking over to see that there was a phone call from her phone. She picks up the phone and said, "Hello?" But when she picked it up, there was no response. Instead, there was this screechy static sound. It sounded so demonic. She honestly didn't know if this was someone pranking her or not, but she hanged up the phone. It wasn't until just before bedtime when she picked up their phone again and she ended up seeing that the phone number was unknown. She ended up answering it, and it turned out to be someone wearing a dress. It was someone wearing a dress outside, but she ended up looking over, shrugging it off as she approached. It was just one of her roommates. Now the phone calls happened again the next night while she was in the middle of homework. She ended up picking up the phone, and of course, it happened to be a deep male voice who said, "Sabrina, you need to send me $10,000. Sabrina obviously knew this was a scam, so she ended up hanging up the number when she blocked it. There was still nothing the police could do about it, even though she showed information and went to the cops the next day. There was nothing really much they can really do, but all they did was take her statement and said that if this person ever called her again, is to call the police. Still to this day, she even wonders, what was this prank call, and who was this person prank calling her? It still even frightens her today, knowing that someone who could have her number, she wasn't even sure who gave her number to who, but whoever for this person was on the phone definitely wanted to pull some pranks, but Sabrina knew that he couldn't even prank her, even if they tried. Of course, she still wonders to this day who this person was, and even if it was someone else, she still wonders. But she does get a little bit of bit of a pretty much a little bit of some paranoia here and there, but she really is now careful who she calls and who she answers her phone to. Now, this happened to Sarah, who was in college at the time of this story. This was sometime back in 2014. Sarah was in college at the time, and of course, it was one of the days when it was raining really hard out. However, it was sometime after classes had ended, and Sarah needed to use the university's library computer to finish her project. As she made her way through the deserted campus, she heard a faint sound coming from her pocket. It was her phone ringing, and she wondered who would be answering or calling this time of the day. Without thinking, she answered the call. As Sarah answered, the wind howling was in the background. But instead of a response, she heard a faint sound of a little girl's voice, crying and sobbing. Sarah's heart went out to the child, and she immediately asked if anyone was there. The crying continued, but this time Sarah could make out the words, "Help me! Please help me! I've been taken!" Without wasting any time, Sarah asked the little girl where she was and if she needed any help. The girl's voice trembled as she answered, "I'm in an abandoned house near a campus. I'm scared. Please save me." Sarah's heart raced as she realized that the house that she was referring to was the infamous Miss Abandoned House on the outskirts of the campus. It was said to be a home of a little girl who died tragically, and her spirit still roamed the house, luring unsuspecting people inside. Sarah couldn't ignore the distress call, so without thinking twice, she ran towards the campus front and ended up using another call to call the police. As she was calling the other house to see whatever it was, the young girl was waiting for a while. And of course, as she was waiting for a while, for a response, suddenly what appeared to be two men armed with guns screamed and yelled, and they ran over, and then the young girl screamed on the phone before it hung up. As soon as the phone hung up, Sarah ended up calling the police, to which the police had arrived, and they ended up taking her statement. But as more information was peered out, Sarah got no updates regarding the young girl who had been kidnapped and stuff. They traced the number only to find out that it had been located somewhere in California, and they contacted the California police. But they didn't indeed find that young girl. They didn't even find her, so Sarah wonders if that child is alive or dead, or God knows where. But she really hoped that young girl found her peace somewhere. Sarah never had a phone call like this, but she really have to say this was this terrifying phone call that she ever had to answer to.